Incubation, the law of faith that few people understand. Paul Yonggi Cho. I am going to say something now that may confuse your mind for a moment. Before you receive anything from God on the outside, you must already possess it completely on the inside. What if I told you that many of your prayers do not fail because of a lack of faith, but because you never allowed that faith to be incubated until it became a real substance within your heart? How many times have you prayed, cried, persisted, and yet continued to feel empty inside? Today I want to reveal to you the law of the incubation of faith, a spiritual principle that transformed my life, transformed my church, and can also transform yours. If you stay with me until the end, you will understand why many people ask, few receive, and almost no one manages to keep what they receive. When I say that faith which is not incubated dies, I am not speaking in theory. I am speaking about something I have seen happen in the lives of thousands of people and something I have experienced deeply myself. There is a kind of faith that is born strong, intense, almost explosive, but it cannot survive the first delay, the first overdue bill, the first refusal life presents. It often begins with tears and promises, but it ends in silence and frustration. Perhaps this describes exactly how you feel today. You pray, you feel something good in that moment, but the next day fear returns with full force. Anxiety tightens your chest. Your mind refuses to rest. And quietly you begin to wonder whether God truly heard you. I know that place. I have been there. When I needed to raise an amount equivalent to several £1,000,000 to complete the construction of the church, I was not filled with courage, I was filled with fear. Many people imagine that leaders of faith live in constant confidence, but that is not true. On the outside I preached hope, but on the inside I trembled. That amount was not just a figure, it was a crushing weight. For wealthy foreigners, such a sum might seem insignificant, but for us, poor Koreans, it appeared impossible. And that is exactly how many of you feel today. Perhaps your own version of that enormous amount is a debt, a medical diagnosis, a broken marriage, a distant child, or an old dream that feels far too big for you. I prayed, but I prayed like someone who was drowning. There was no rest in my prayer. There was no peace. There was desperation. And this is far more common than you might think. Most people do not pray from faith, they pray from fear. They speak to God, yet they continue an endless conversation with anxiety inside their minds. How many times have you gone to bed exhausted, your body worn out, but your mind racing, repeating the same problem again and again? That is not a lack of spirituality. It is the soul trying to survive without security. For many months, I spent entire nights awake. Sometimes I would leave the bed, go to a corner of the house, and cry quietly. Other times I would stand still, unable to think about anything else, as if my mind were locked onto that problem. My wife thought I was losing my sanity, but what I truly had was inner blindness. I could only see the mountain, I could not see God as greater than the mountain. And here is something you must understand very clearly, while the problem occupies all the space in your mind, faith cannot grow. Faith needs time, silence, and persistence to be incubated. Today, science confirms something the spiritual world has always known. When a person lives in a constant state of uncertainty and threat, the brain enters survival mode. Fear takes control, creativity diminishes, and hope retreats. That is exactly why so many people give up before the miracle. It is not because God failed, but because their faith never moved beyond the emotional stage to become conviction. They felt something, but they never incubated that feeling until it turned into certainty. Perhaps you have lived through this many times. You begin a purpose, a prayer, a project filled with enthusiasm. In the first days everything seems possible. But time passes, nothing changes on the outside, and you begin to wonder whether you are wasting your time. You look at others and think, why does it work for them and not for me? Gradually, almost without noticing, you stop praying with expectation and begin praying out of obligation. That is when faith starts to die. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a flame fading due to a lack of oxygen. I learned that true faith is not what you feel during a service, it is what remains when you are alone, tired, and without answers. Faith that transforms life is built in secrecy, through repetition, persistence, and silence before God. That is where it is incubated. That is where fear begins to lose its power. Not because the problem disappears, but because something inside you begins to change. You still see nothing on the outside, but you begin to feel something different within. A strange calm. An unexplainable rest. A sense that even though everything looks the same, something is already moving. If you have never reached that place, it does not mean you have failed. It only means you stopped too soon. Most people give up at the exact point when faith is about to be born. They confuse delay with denial. They confuse silence with abandonment. But incubation requires time. It requires staying before God until fear gives way to security. Until that happens, faith remains fragile. And fragile faith cannot sustain great change. Perhaps today you are right in the middle of this process, thinking that nothing is working, when in reality something is being formed inside you. Do not give up now. Faith that survives fear is the faith that transforms destinies. There came a moment when something changed completely inside me, even though nothing outside had changed yet. No money had arrived, no door had opened, no phone had rung. Even so, I knew. It was not excitement. It was not euphoria. It was not self-deception. It was security. A security so deep that it no longer depended on circumstances. It is difficult to explain to someone who has never experienced it, but when it happens, you know. You simply know. For many months I prayed without rest, yet I still carried fear. Until the day when, suddenly, something happened within me. It was not a noise, not an external vision, not someone telling me something. It was as if a weight was lifted from my chest and replaced with a quiet certainty. I felt that what I had been asking for was already mine. Not in the form of money, not as figures on a bank statement, but as an inner substance. What once seemed like a mountain now fit inside me. And when something fits inside you, it no longer frightens you. I stood up from my chair and began shouting that I had succeeded. My wife thought I had lost my mind. And I understand her. From the outside, it looked like madness. How can someone say they have obtained something they cannot yet see? But true faith begins exactly where logic ends. I was not denying reality, I was accessing a deeper reality. That enormous sum was already inside me, growing, firm, secure. There was no more desperation in my prayer. I was no longer begging. I was giving thanks. Many people never reach this place. They pray, yet remain insecure. They ask, yet never rest. They speak with God, but continue conversing with fear all the time. They want immediate answers because they cannot endure the silence of the process. That is why they live emotionally exhausted. Today, studies even show that people who live without a sense of internal control or security develop higher levels of anxiety and emotional fatigue. Incubated faith does the opposite. It organizes the inside before transforming the outside. When you reach this inner substance, something changes in the way you live. You still face problems, but you are no longer dominated by them. You still see obstacles, but you do not feel panic. You begin to sleep better. You begin to think more clearly. You begin to respond differently to the same situations. This is not empty mysticism, it is the effect of inner security. Faith stops being a desperate request and becomes deep rest. Perhaps you have never experienced this and think that faith is simply believing that things will work out. But that is very little. Faith that transforms is the kind that becomes certainty before the result appears. It is when you can say, even in silence, it is already done, without needing to convince anyone. It is not something you force, it is something that is born after remaining long enough in the presence of God. That is why many people pray, but few remain. Remain until the soul grows quiet. Until fear is silenced. Until security arrives. When that security arrives, you stop looking for external signs to keep believing. You no longer depend on the opinions of others or on good news to feel at peace. Something within you takes control. At that point, faith is no longer fragile. At that point, it becomes capable of sustaining great change. Because what is generated within you inevitably begins to manifest outside. If today you still feel insecure, do not condemn yourself. Simply understand that the process is not finished yet. Continue. Remain. Pray until the substance comes. Because when it comes, you will no longer ask whether God heard you. You will simply live as someone who has already received. There is a decisive moment in the life of faith when inner silence must be broken by words. Many people do not advance because they stop exactly there. They believe inwardly, they feel something different in their hearts, but they refuse to speak. They fear judgment, criticism, the laughter of others. They prefer to keep faith hidden, as if it were too fragile to be exposed. But faith that is not declared ends up being suffocated. God taught me something very clear: what you do not have the courage to say, you do not yet truly possess. While faith remains only in thought, it creates nothing. Words give form to what was incubated in the heart. It has been this way from the beginning. God spoke, and the universe came into being. Words are the material the Holy Spirit uses to create. Without words, there is no manifestation. Look at what happened with Abraham. He had already received the promise and had incubated that vision for many years, but God required something that seemed absurd. He changed his name from Abram to Abraham, father of many nations. Imagine the weight of that. Imagine leaving home as an old man, without children, and being called father of multitudes every day. People laughed. They whispered. They thought he had lost his mind. And that is exactly where many give up. They cannot endure social pressure. They prefer to appear reasonable in the eyes of others rather than obedient before God. Perhaps this is happening to you. You believe your life can change, but you cannot say it out loud. When someone asks how you are, you answer by focusing on the problem, the difficulty, the crisis. You speak exactly what you do not want to keep living. And without realizing it, you strengthen the wrong reality with your own words. Studies on human behavior show that what a person repeatedly verbalizes shapes beliefs, emotions, and even decisions. In the spiritual realm, this is even deeper. Words do not merely describe, they create. I learned that speaking as if it already is does not deny reality, it chooses which reality will prevail. When you declare what God has already placed within you, even if you see nothing outside yet, you align your mouth with your spirit. And this requires courage. Courage to seem strange. Courage not to explain everything. Courage to keep saying the same thing even when nothing changes for a while. Many people say to me, "What if I speak and nothing happens?" That question reveals the fear of embarrassment, not a lack of faith. True faith does not speak to impress people, it speaks to cooperate with God. Abraham and Sarah continued calling themselves father of nations and princess even when no one believed. They did not adjust their words to fit others' opinions. They adjusted their words to align with the promise. And exactly as they spoke, so it happened. Perhaps today your greatest challenge is not to pray more, but to change what you have been saying. What do you declare about your life when no one is listening? What do you say about your future when things become tight? Do you reinforce fear or reinforce the promise? The mouth reveals what rules the heart. And while your speech is dominated by doubt, faith will remain limited. There comes a moment when you must decide. Either you keep speaking like someone who is still waiting, or you begin speaking like someone who has already received. That step changes everything. When words align with incubated faith, the process enters a new phase. Faith stops being internal and begins to manifest in the real world. Even if people do not understand, even if they laugh, even if they doubt, keep speaking. It is not external voices that determine the outcome, but the word that comes from your mouth aligned with what God has already generated within you. There comes a point when faith can no longer remain only in the heart or only in the mouth. It must move. This is the most delicate point of all, because here fear takes a different form. It is no longer the fear of not receiving, but the fear of acting and failing. The fear of taking a step and nothing happening. The fear of exposure. Many people incubate faith and speak correctly, but freeze at the moment of action. And faith that does not act becomes nothing more than a beautiful concept. I learned this in a way that never left my memory. I was in a meeting in Australia, a small place with about 1,500 people. Right in front of me was a woman in a wheelchair, so deformed that it deeply affected me. I avoided looking at her while I preached, because every time my eyes crossed that scene, my heart grew cold. I thought to myself, Lord, why is she right there? How can I exercise faith in front of this? I felt fear. Real fear. Not fear that God would not act, but fear that I would obey and nothing would happen. During the service, the Holy Spirit began speaking to me insistently, telling me to go down and lift her up. I resisted. I argued. I tried to negotiate. I said I was terrified. Meanwhile, other people were being healed. A blind woman regained her sight, people were being touched all around, but that woman remained there, in front of me, like a test. The Holy Spirit kept repeating the same thing, and I kept running away. Perhaps you can identify with this. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to do, but postponed it out of fear of the outcome? At the end of the service, with almost no courage, I gave in. I went down from the platform and spoke to her almost in a whisper so no one would hear, telling her that if she wished, she could stand up from the wheelchair. I said it and walked away quickly without even looking. Then the place erupted. Shouts, applause, people crying. That woman stood up and began walking. The miracle happened after the step, not before. In that moment I understood something that changed my life. Signs do not go ahead of faith, they follow faith. Many people ask whether I have the gift of faith or the gift of healing. I have examined my heart many times and have not found those gifts in myself. The only gift I recognize is boldness, the courage to act even with fear. Gifts belong to the Holy Spirit, not to me. He manifests when someone decides to obey. And that is liberating, because it means you do not need to be special, you do not need to be perfect, you do not need to feel absolute confidence. You only need to go. Studies today even show that people who act in alignment with their inner convictions develop a greater sense of purpose and emotional well-being. Consistent action strengthens the mind. In the spiritual realm, it strengthens faith. When you act, even with your heart racing, something adjusts within you. Fear loses strength. Faith gains substance. And the environment begins to respond. Perhaps you are waiting to feel courageous before acting, but courage does not come first. It is born during movement. If I had waited not to feel fear in that meeting, that woman would have remained in the wheelchair, and I would have missed the opportunity to see heaven touch earth. How many opportunities have you lost waiting to feel ready? True faith is not the absence of fear, it is decision despite fear. It is standing up, taking the step, speaking to someone, trying again, obeying even while trembling. When you do this, something powerful happens. The Holy Spirit moves. Signs begin to follow. And you realize that you were never alone in the process. This is how faith is completed. It is born in the heart, takes form in words, and manifests through action. When you choose to act, even without external guarantees, you discover that God was always ready to move. He was simply waiting for you to take the first step. Before you leave, I want this to be deeply engraved within you. The most important point of everything shared here is not money, not miracles, not outward growth. It is this: everything God does on the outside begins incubated on the inside. Most people try to change their lives without first changing their inner world, and that is why they live frustrated, tired, and confused. When you understand the law of incubation, you stop fighting circumstances and begin cooperating with the process. You learn to remain until faith becomes substance, to speak in alignment with that conviction, and to act even when fear still tries to stop you. That is the turning point. If you made it this far, it was not by chance. That alone is a sign that something is being adjusted within you right now. Do not ignore this moment. Use this content as a step. The next video appearing is designed to help you move one level higher, one step further, one more percentage in your growth in wisdom, clarity, and spiritual maturity. Small advances, made consistently, transform entire destinies. Thank you for walking with me until here. It is always a joy to share what transformed my life and the lives of so many others. I will see you in the next video.